Welcome back, fellow explorers of the unknown. Tonight, we're diving deep into the heart of the South, into a land steeped in history, mystery, and whispers of the supernatural. I'm your host, and if you've ever wondered what lies beyond the veil of reality, then this episode is for you. We're kicking off an all-new series titled Most Haunted Places in Mississippi, where we'll uncover the chilling stories behind some of the state's most notorious haunted locations. Mississippi may be known for its rich cultural heritage, from blues music to Civil War battlefields, but beneath its surface lies something far more sinister. The echoes of the past refuse to fade, lingering in creaking floorboards, shadowy hallways, and forgotten corners of time. From abandoned plantations with dark histories to eerie asylums that once housed the mentally ill, this state holds countless secrets waiting to be unearthed. And tonight, we begin our journey at one of the most infamous spots on our list, the Whispering Pines Plantation. But before we step into the darkness, let me remind you, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss another spine-chilling episode. If you've been with us since the beginning, thank you for joining me on this journey through the paranormal. Now, get comfortable, dim the lights, and prepare yourself for a night of terror. Because what we're about to uncover will make you question everything you thought you knew about the living and the dead. Are you ready? Then let's take our first step into the shadows, the dark legacy of Whispering Pines Plantation. Long before it became a place of fear and legend, Whispering Pines Plantation was a thriving estate built in the early 1800s by Elias Whitmore, a wealthy cotton baron whose name still lingers in local folklore. Situated deep within the dense forests of Mississippi's southern region, the plantation was once a symbol of prosperity, its grand white columns and sprawling fields stretching for miles. But beneath the opulence lay a brutal truth. Whispering Pines was built on the suffering of enslaved people, many of whom toiled under harsh conditions, their cries lost in the rustling pines that gave the estate its name. It is said that even now, when the wind blows just right, faint whispers can be heard drifting through the trees, as if the voices of the past are trying to tell their story. The true horror of Whispering Pines began in the mid-19th century when Elias Whitmore, driven by paranoia and obsession, started locking his slaves in the basement of the main house during thunderstorms. He believed that lightning was a sign of divine punishment, and that only those confined underground would be spared. Many perished in the damp, airless chambers, their bodies left to rot while Whitmore continued his cruel rituals. When Union forces marched through Mississippi during the Civil War, they found the plantation eerily deserted, the scent of decay clinging to the air. Whitmore had vanished, leaving behind only the skeletal remains of those he had imprisoned. Some say he fled into the woods, driven mad by guilt, while others believe he died within the very walls he had cursed out. In the decades that followed, the plantation changed hands several times, each new owner met with misfortune. One family reported waking in the middle of the night to find shadowy figures standing at the foot of their beds, watching them in silence. Another claimed to hear the sound of chains dragging across the wooden floors, though no such artifacts remained in the house. By the early 20th century, Whispering Pines had become completely abandoned, left to rot beneath the weight of its own dark past. Locals avoided the property, whispering tales of strange occurrences, doors slamming shut without warning, phantom footsteps echoing through empty halls, and the distant wails of unseen children. Today, the plantation stands as a decaying relic of a bygone era, its once grand facade now covered in moss and ivy. The windows are shattered, the roof sagging, and the front porch groans under the weight of time. Yet despite its state of ruin, the house remains a magnet for thrill-seekers and paranormal investigators alike. Many have attempted to explore its depths, armed with cameras and recording equipment, hoping to capture evidence of the spirits that supposedly haunt its halls. Few leave unchanged. Some report feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, as if unseen eyes are watching their every move. Others claim to see fleeting glimpses of figures in the corners of their vision, only to turn and find nothing there. One particularly harrowing account comes from a group of college students who ventured into the plantation late one night, determined to prove or disprove the legends surrounding it. As they explored the upstairs bedrooms, one of them captured footage of a small girl standing in the hallway, staring directly at the camera. When they called out to her, she simply tilted her head before vanishing into thin air. No child had been present, and no one could explain the image that appeared on the video. Since that night, the footage has become infamous among paranormal enthusiasts, fueling speculation that the spirits of Whispering Pines are not merely echoes of the past, but something far more dangerous. As we prepare to step inside this forsaken mansion, one thing is certain: whatever happened here did not end with the last breath drawn within these walls. The past clings to Whispering Pines like a thick fog, refusing to be forgotten. Whether it is the tortured souls of the enslaved, the tormented spirit of Elias Whitmore, or something else entirely, one thing is clear: this place is not empty. Something still lingers, waiting in the shadows for the next curious soul to cross its threshold, into the heart of darkness. Exploring Whispering Pines. As I stepped through the broken doorway of Whispering Pines, a chill ran down my spine. The air inside felt different, thicker, heavier, as if the very atmosphere resisted intrusion. Dust swirled in the shafts of moonlight filtering through the cracked windows, casting ghostly patterns across the warped wooden floor. Every step I took echoed unnaturally, bouncing off the walls as if the house itself were listening. My flashlight flickered momentarily before steadying, illuminating the remnants of a once grand parlor room. Faded wallpaper peeled away from the walls, revealing glimpses of older layers beneath, as if time had tried to erase the horrors that had unfolded here. I moved cautiously through the space, my breath shallow, my senses heightened. To my left, an ornate staircase led to the upper floors, its banisters splintered and worn. I hesitated before placing my hand on the wood, expecting it to be cold, but instead, I felt a sudden jolt of warmth, as if something beneath the surface was still alive. Shaking off the sensation, I pressed forward, making my way toward the back of the house where the basement entrance loomed like a gaping maw. The heavy wooden door creaked ominously as I pushed it open, revealing a narrow stairwell descending into darkness. The deeper I went, the colder it became. The air was damp, carrying the unmistakable scent of mildew and decay. My flashlight beam barely reached the bottom, illuminating rusted shackles bolted to the stone walls, remnants of Elias Whitmore's cruel imprisonment. As I descended, the silence became oppressive, broken only by the rhythmic drip of water somewhere in the distance. Then, without warning, a low whisper brushed against my ear. I spun around, heart pounding, but there was nothing behind me, only the endless stretch of stone walls and darkness. I forced myself to continue, reaching the basement floor where the remnants of crude wooden cells stood like silent sentinels. The moment I stepped inside, a wave of nausea overtook me. My knees buckled, and I dropped to the ground, clutching my stomach as an overwhelming sense of despair washed over me. It was as if the very essence of suffering had seeped into the foundation of this place, clinging to anyone who dared enter. I fought to steady my breathing, reminding myself that this was exactly why I came, to bear witness to the torment that still lingered in these walls. Gathering my composure, I turned to leave, but as I did, I noticed something strange. My flashlight, which had been working perfectly moments ago, suddenly dimmed, flickering erratically before going out entirely. In the pitch black, I felt something brush past my leg, a cold, skeletal hand trailing up my calf before vanishing into the void. I scrambled backward, heart hammering in my chest, fumbling for the flashlight controls. With a final flicker, it reignited, casting long shadows across the basement walls. And there, carved into the stone beside one of the cells, was a message that hadn't been there before. The words were jagged, uneven, as if they had been scratched into the wall by desperate fingers. My pulse quickened. Was this a trick of the light? Had someone been here before me? Or was it something else, something urging me to remember the suffering that had taken place in this cursed place? Before I could dwell on the implications, a deafening crash echoed from above. I rushed toward the stairs, my breath coming in short bursts, my instincts screaming at me to flee. As I emerged into the main house once more, I realized the source of the noise. A heavy portrait had fallen from the wall, shattering glass across the floor. It depicted Elias Whitmore himself, his piercing gaze frozen in time, his expression twisted in something between madness and regret. I stood there, staring at the wreckage, my mind racing. This place was not merely haunted, It was alive with pain, anger, and sorrow. Whatever force resided within these walls, it wanted to be heard. And as I prepared to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The stories surrounding Whispering Pines are not limited to those who dare to explore its decaying halls. They come from locals who grew up hearing whispered warnings, from historians piecing together the fragments of its gruesome past, and from those who have encountered the inexplicable firsthand. Among the most chilling accounts is that of Margaret Hensley, a retired schoolteacher who lived just outside the plantation grounds for most of her life. She recalls how, as a child, her grandmother would warn her never to wander too close to the property line. She used to say the trees whispered at night, Margaret told me, her voice trembling slightly as she recounted the memory. Not just the wind, actual voices. Sad ones? Angry ones? Margaret claims that on more than one occasion, she saw figures standing at the edge of the forest, watching the road as if waiting for someone long gone. They weren't real people, she insisted. You could see right through them. Like ghosts caught between worlds. She described one particularly terrifying incident when, as a teenager, she and her boyfriend decided to test the rumors and drive up to the plantation gates. We didn't go inside, she clarified quickly. Just sat in the car, laughing about it. But then, out of nowhere, we heard a scream, right outside the window. Not an animal. Not the wind. A person. A woman crying for help. They drove off immediately, shaken, and later learned from a neighbor that the scream had been heard by others in the area. No one ever found out where it came from, she added. But we knew. We knew it came from inside that house. Local historian Thomas Delaney has spent years researching the origins of Whispering Pines, compiling records and testimonies from descendants of those who once lived nearby. According to him, the plantation's dark legacy extends far beyond the documented cruelty of Elias Whitmore. There were rumors, whispers of secret rituals, of disappearances that were never officially recorded, Thomas explained. Some believe Whitmore wasn't just punishing his slaves, he was experimenting on them. His research uncovered old newspaper clippings detailing missing persons cases from the 1850s, all linked to the surrounding area. No bodies were ever found, he noted grimly. And Whitmore himself disappeared shortly before Union troops arrived. No one knows exactly what happened to him. Perhaps the most unsettling testimony comes from Dr. Evelyn Carter, a former psychiatrist who worked at the nearby Pine Hollow Asylum in the 1970s. She recalled treating a patient who had grown up near Whispering Pines and claimed to have seen things no child should ever witness. He used to draw pictures, disturbing images of people hanging from the trees, of figures crawling out of the ground, she told me. At first, we assumed it was trauma from his home life, but the details were too specific. Too accurate. When asked what he saw, the boy allegedly described the plantation's basement with perfect precision, even though he had never set foot inside. He kept saying the house was hungry, Dr. Carter murmured. That it needed more souls to stay alive. Even law enforcement officials have acknowledged the peculiar nature of the area. Sheriff Marcus Grady, who patrolled the region for over 2 decades, admitted that Whispering Pines was often the site of unexplained disturbances. People swore they saw lights flickering inside, even though the power had been disconnected for years, he said. Others reported hearing children laughing, but when we checked, there was no one there. On one occasion, deputies responded to a call about trespassers on the property, only to find the intruders curled up in a corner of the house, sobbing uncontrollably. They said they were locked in, Sheriff Grady recalled. That the doors wouldn't open, that something was chasing them. But there was no sign of forced entry, no struggle. Just fear. These accounts, gathered from multiple sources over generations, paint a picture of a place where the boundary between the living and the dead is blurred. Whether it is the residual energy of suffering, the restless spirits of those who perished within its walls, or something far more sinister, one thing is certain: Whispering Pines continues to exert its influence, drawing people in and leaving them forever changed. The unraveling mind, descent into madness. As I made my way back through the main house, the oppressive weight of the place seemed to intensify. Each step felt heavier, as if the very air was pressing down on me, slowing my movements. I had been in plenty of reportedly haunted locations before, but none had ever affected me quite like this. There was something deeply wrong with Whispering Pines, not just the lingering echoes of tragedy, but a presence that actively sought to unsettle the mind. The further I walked, the more difficult it became to think clearly. My thoughts became sluggish, tangled in a haze of confusion. I blinked rapidly, trying to dispel the growing sense of disorientation. That's when I noticed it, the sound. At first, it was subtle, a soft hum in the background, almost imperceptible. But as I focused, it grew louder, morphing into a low, unintelligible murmur, like 1,000 voices whispering just beyond the edge of comprehension. I stopped in my tracks, straining to listen, but the words refused to form any recognizable pattern. Then, the temperature plummeted. I exhaled sharply, watching as my breath instantly misted in the frigid air. Goosebumps erupted along my arms, and I wrapped my jacket tighter around me, though I knew instinctively that the cold was not natural. It wasn't just physical, it was psychological, creeping into my bones and filling me with an unbearable sense of dread. A sudden, sharp bang echoed from the upper floor, snapping me out of my trance. My pulse spiked as I instinctively looked toward the staircase, my flashlight beam shaking slightly in my grip. I had heard enough stories to know that investigating strange noises in places like this was rarely a good idea, but something compelled me forward. Perhaps it was curiosity, or perhaps it was something darker, something pulling me deeper into the house's grasp. I ascended the stairs slowly, each step groaning beneath my weight. The higher I climbed, the more distorted the air became, as if I was walking through thick fog. Shadows danced along the walls, shifting unnaturally, twisting into grotesque shapes that defied logic. I told myself it was just a flickering flashlight, but deep down, I knew better. At the top of the landing, I paused. The hallway stretched ahead, lined with closed doors, each one seemingly identical. I had entered this house with a clear sense of direction, but now, everything felt unfamiliar. The layout had shifted, subtly yet undeniably. Panic clawed at the edges of my mind. I had been here before, hadn't I? I turned back toward the staircase, but it was gone. In its place was only a blank wall, the same peeling wallpaper curling at the edges. My breathing quickened. I spun around, scanning the corridor, searching for any sign of the path I had taken. Nothing. The hallway stretched endlessly in both directions, yet I could not recall turning anywhere. I pressed forward, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs refused to obey. Then, from one of the rooms, a child's laughter rang out, bright, playful, utterly out of place in this nightmare. I froze. The sound was impossibly close, yet there was no visible source. Slowly, cautiously, I approached the nearest door and placed my hand on the doorknob. It was warm, too warm. I hesitated, then pushed it open. Inside, the room was bathed in an eerie golden glow, though there were no windows, no lamps. A single rocking chair sat in the center, swaying gently on its own. Dust particles floated lazily in the air, illuminated by the unnatural light. I stepped inside, drawn forward despite the gnawing fear gnashing at my insides. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw it, a figure. Small, hunched, barely visible in the dimness. It turned toward me, and I saw its face. A child, no older than 6, with hollow eyes and a mouth stretched into an impossible grin. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, and its lips were smeared with something dark. Blood? Mud? I couldn't tell. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my own feet. The child didn't move. It simply stared, that grotesque smile never faltering. Then, in a voice that was neither loud nor quiet, but filled with an unbearable weight of sorrow, it spoke. What lurks in Whispering Pines? As I tried to make sense of my experience inside Whispering Pines, I couldn't help but wonder, what was truly responsible for the horrors I witnessed? Was it the residual energy of the suffering that had occurred within those walls? Were the spirits of the enslaved souls trapped in an eternal cycle of torment? Or was something far more sinister at work? Over the years, paranormal researchers and historians have proposed various theories to explain the phenomena reported at Whispering Pines, each offering a unique perspective on what might be causing the relentless hauntings. One of the most widely accepted explanations is the concept of residual hauntings, where intense emotions or traumatic events imprint themselves onto a location, replaying like a recording whenever certain conditions are met. In the case of Whispering Pines, the sheer amount of suffering endured by the enslaved individuals locked in the basement may have created a powerful psychic imprint. Those who visit the plantation often describe feeling waves of despair, fear, and anguish, as if the very air carries the weight of centuries-old agony. Some experts believe that the human brain is capable of picking up on these emotional imprints, manifesting them as visual or auditory hallucinations. Another theory suggests that Whispering Pines may be home to intelligent spirits, beings who are aware of their surroundings and capable of communication. Unlike residual hauntings, which are passive and non-responsive, intelligent spirits can react to visitors, sometimes even attempting to convey messages or warnings. The young girl I encountered in the upstairs bedroom fits this description perfectly. She did not merely appear, she spoke directly to me, pleading for me not to leave. Many who have explored the plantation report similar encounters, describing conversations with unseen voices, sudden temperature drops, and objects moving on their own. Some believe these spirits are the souls of those who perished within the house, unable to move on due to unfinished business or extreme trauma. Others speculate that Elias Whitmore himself may still be bound to the property, his consciousness trapped in a loop of guilt and madness. However, not all theories point to benevolent or neutral spirits. Some researchers propose that Whispering Pines may be a hotspot for demonic activity, where malevolent entities feed off negative energy and prey on vulnerable minds. This explanation aligns with the overwhelming sense of dread and psychological distress experienced by those who enter the house. Unlike traditional ghosts, demons are often described as manipulative, deceptive, and intent on causing harm. Several accounts describe visitors being physically attacked, restrained by unseen forces, or experiencing sudden bouts of insanity while inside the plantation. If this theory holds true, then Whispering Pines is not merely haunted, it is cursed, a place where evil thrives and grows stronger with time. Beyond the realm of traditional paranormal explanations, some theorists suggest that Whispering Pines may be connected to interdimensional rifts or alternate realities. This hypothesis posits that certain locations act as gateways between dimensions, allowing entities from other planes of existence to bleed into our world. Proponents of this theory point to the bizarre distortions in space and time reported by explorers, hallways that shift unexpectedly, staircases leading to nowhere, and voices speaking in languages that do not exist. If Whispering Pines serves as a thin veil between worlds, then the horrors within may not be bound by the laws of our reality at all. Of course, not everyone believes in the supernatural. Skeptics argue that many of the experiences reported at Whispering Pines can be attributed to psychological factors, environmental influences, or even deliberate hoaxes. The power of suggestion plays a significant role in shaping perceptions. When people expect to encounter ghosts, they are more likely to interpret ambiguous stimuli as paranormal. Additionally, the remote location, decaying structure, and historical reputation of the plantation create an ideal setting for heightened anxiety and sensory distortion. Mold spores, electromagnetic fluctuations, and infrasound, all naturally occurring in old buildings, can contribute to feelings of unease, dizziness, and hallucinations. While these explanations offer rational alternatives, they fail to account for the consistency of the reports across decades and generations. Ultimately, whether Whispering Pines is haunted by vengeful spirits, demonic forces, interdimensional entities, or simply the power of human imagination remains a matter of debate. What is undeniable, however, is that something lingers within those walls, something that refuses to be ignored. Uncovering more cursed grounds as I stepped out of Whispering Pines, the cool night air did little to soothe the lingering unease in my chest. The plantation had revealed only a fraction of its secrets, and yet I knew I had to press on. Mississippi's haunted landscape held more than just one cursed location, and I was determined to uncover the full extent of the state's supernatural horrors. Armed with my findings from Whispering Pines, I set out to investigate other rumored hotspots, each with its own tragic history and chilling reports of paranormal activity. My next destination was Cypress Hollow, a secluded stretch of swamp land just outside Vicksburg, known for its eerie stillness and unsettling legends. Locals spoke of a spectral woman in a tattered dress wandering the murky waters, her mournful wails echoing through the night. According to folklore, she was once a runaway slave who drowned in the swamp while fleeing from bounty hunters. Some claimed she appeared only to those who trespassed on sacred burial grounds hidden beneath the reeds. Others believed she was a guardian spirit, warning outsiders to stay away from the ancient Native American ruins buried beneath the mud. Determined to learn the truth, I ventured into the swamp under the cover of darkness, my flashlight cutting through the thick fog as I listened for signs of the ghostly figure. As I trudged through the knee-deep water, the silence became suffocating. Even the usual sounds of nocturnal wildlife had ceased, as if the swamp itself was holding its breath. Then, just as I was about to turn back, I heard it, a faint sobbing, carried by the wind. I followed the sound, pushing aside hanging vines and stepping over gnarled roots, until I reached a clearing where the water stilled into a perfect mirror. Reflected in its surface was the silhouette of a woman, standing motionless at the water's edge. My breath hitched. I lifted my flashlight, but when I looked again, she was gone. Only ripples disturbed the water where she had stood. Shaken but unwilling to give up, I continued my search, documenting every anomaly. The deeper I went, the more the air seemed to thicken, pressing against my skin like an invisible force. Then, without warning, my flashlight flickered and died. Darkness swallowed me whole. I fumbled for the backup battery, but before I could replace it, I felt something brush against my ankle, an icy touch, brief but unmistakable. I stumbled backward, slipping in the mud, and scrambled to relight my flashlight. When the beam finally reignited, I found myself surrounded by a circle of overturned stones, arranged in a pattern that resembled an ancient ritual. My heart pounded. Had I stumbled upon the burial grounds? Or worse, was I intruding on something meant to remain undisturbed? With no answers and my nerves frayed, I retreated from the swamp, my boots squelching with every step. Cypress Hollow had given me more questions than answers, but one thing was certain. Whatever lurked beneath its murky waters was not merely a figment of local superstition. My journey continued to Rosewood Asylum, an abandoned psychiatric hospital on the outskirts of Jackson, long rumored to be one of the most haunted buildings in the state. Once a place of supposed healing, Rosewood had gained a reputation for cruel and inhumane treatments, including experimental electroshock therapy and forced sedation. Patients had reportedly gone mad within its walls, their screams echoing through the corridors long after their deaths. Many believed that their spirits still roamed the halls, trapped in an eternal state of torment. Armed with a digital recorder and infrared camera, I entered the asylum under the cover of night, careful to avoid the crumbling sections of the building. The moment I stepped inside, the temperature dropped significantly, and the scent of mildew and decay filled my nostrils. Graffiti-covered walls bore cryptic messages, some written in frantic scrawl, others etched into the plaster, as if done in desperation. I moved cautiously through the reception area, noting the remnants of old medical equipment scattered across the floor. The haunting truth, why these spirits remain. As I pieced together the stories, experiences, and evidence from Whispering Pines, Cypress Hollow, and Rosewood Asylum, a disturbing pattern began to emerge, one that suggested these spirits were not merely lingering echoes of the past, but something far more complex. Their presence was not random. It was tied to the very foundations of these places, rooted in trauma, injustice, and unresolved suffering. Whether they were the tormented souls of the enslaved, the victims of cruel experimentation, or the lost souls of those who perished in isolation, one thing was certain: they were not at peace. The phenomenon of residual energy offers one explanation. Trauma leaves a mark, not just on the living, but on the spaces where it occurs. Intense emotions, especially those tied to death, fear, and despair, can imprint themselves onto the environment, creating loops of repeated actions and sensations. Visitors to these sites often report hearing disembodied voices, witnessing apparitions, or feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, symptoms that align with the theory that these locations serve as psychic recordings, playing back the echoes of past horrors. However, this does not fully explain the interactive nature of many encounters, nor does it account for the intelligence displayed by some of the spirits. Then there is the theory of intelligent hauntings, wherein spirits retain awareness of their surroundings and the ability to communicate. Many who have explored these locations claim to have engaged in direct interactions with entities, conversations carried out through EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, physical responses to questions, or even attempts to manipulate the living. In Whispering Pines, the child's plea, "Don't forget us," suggests a level of consciousness that goes beyond mere repetition. Similarly, the voices at Rosewood Asylum beg to be freed, indicating that these spirits recognize their captivity and seek release. But from what? And why now? Some researchers propose that these spirits are trapped. Final thoughts. The echoes that remain as I sit here, reflecting on everything we've uncovered in this journey through Mississippi's most haunted places, I can't shake the lingering feeling that something is still watching. Maybe it's just my nerves after everything I've seen, or maybe, just maybe, it's something more. Whispering Pines, Cypress Hollow, Rosewood Asylum, these aren't just names on a map or spooky stories to tell around a campfire. They are real places with real histories, places where tragedy, injustice, and suffering left scars so deep that even time couldn't erase them. And now, those scars have taken on a life of their own. I know many of you love a good ghost story. You crave the thrill, the chills running down your spine, the way your heart pounds when something unexplainable happens on camera. But what I hope you take away from this episode isn't just fear, it's remembrance. These spirits, if they truly exist, were once people. They had lives, dreams, families. They suffered, they cried, they died. And now they linger, unable, or unwilling, to move on. Whether it's residual energy replaying the worst moments of their existence, intelligent entities reaching out for help, or something far darker altogether, one thing remains certain: they want us to remember them. This was only the beginning. In future episodes, we'll dive even deeper into the haunted corners of Mississippi and beyond. We'll explore more cursed locations, speak with experts, historians, and those who claim to have made contact with the other side. But before we continue, I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced something unexplainable? Do you believe these spirits are trapped echoes of the past, or something far more conscious? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation going. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss another chilling investigation. Whether you're a skeptic, a believer, or just someone who loves a good mystery, thank you for joining me on this journey into the unknown. Stay curious, stay brave, and above all, stay vigilant. Because sometimes, the scariest things in life aren't just hiding in the dark, they're waiting for you to find them. Until next time, keep searching for the truth, and be careful what you uncover.